Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Red Devils. And a very interesting day in the Manchester United world with a lot of transfer rumours starting to really mount up. And we are now 7 days into the transfer window. No real actions thus far, but we do have an Ornstein report. We do have a couple of Ornstein reports, actually, and some other rumours swirling around in the transfer mill. And this is good news because you want to try and add to our squad ideally this January, even on loans, for example, at least sort of try and sort the squad out in terms of players who aren't players, maybe playing going out on loan, for example, bringing in players to try and sort of strengthen certain positions, like left back, for example, where Dalot's had to deputise for the last sort of couple of months, most of the season, actually, really. So it's an interesting time for United, and hopefully we do manage to go into the transfer window. Maybe one or two players, but a very high-profile name is actually being linked to United. We'll get into that a little bit, as well as some updates on Xerxes, on Anthony, as well as a look at this weekend, for example, up against Arsenal, and what the chances of United actually managing to get a result potentially are, because we've got to go try and get a result this weekend. As I said, after going out of the Carabao Cup in December, the FA Cup kind of is alongside the Europa League as our only other options for silverware, and big match against Arsenal, but we've got to look at trying to focus on it. We've got to go all in, and Arsenal, well, they haven't won a trophy in a while as well, so they're going to be looking at the FA Cup as something that they can potentially definitely try and win, especially given the fact that once again their league sort of push is not looking as good as they like, given how dominant Liverpool are, and whilst United did a bit of a favour, they're still well ahead. So I think both teams will be going all out on Sunday. Expect to see both teams at full strength. And what will be interesting to see from United's perspective is the fact that we have pitched up and played some really big games very, very well so far. Can we do it again? Can we get a big result? But let's get into some transfer news, shall we? Big news for United is that David Ornstein has confirmed that Tottenham, Man United, and Juventus are all exploring a deal to sign Kolo Muani on loan from PSG. And first real sort of concrete transfer rumor we have for United. Now, it's an interesting idea, especially the fact he's bringing on loan, because obviously United, big links to a striker. We've got Rasmus Højlund, and I think everybody's pretty happy with Rasmus Højlund, not particularly happy with Joshua Xerxes, and lots of talks about having to bring in another sort of already, at the top of the level type of striker, who is a bit older, a bit more experienced, for example, and going to give you 20 to 30 goals a season and let Rasmus Højlund kind of develop into that striker. And this is the first sort of big move that we are really being linked to properly. So Ornstein's come out and said that there's currently viewed as top contenders for the forward, who is among the best versatile attackers available in the window. So what would you like? Would you like to see that signing? Let me know. So this is the tweet that Ornstein has put out last night out on the Athletics. So if you want to know your best transfer, this is obviously your man. And look, in terms of the three options there, you'd like to think we could probably beat out a Tottenham. Juventus would be an interesting move. So if you look at Kolo Muani, for example, looking at his stats a bit earlier, and he was signed from Frankfurt last season, to PSG. And you look at his career, for example, it hasn't really hit the heights that I think a lot of people expected him to do. So has had sort of a rise, went to Frankfurt 2022 and made the move to PSG. Now, if we look at his current season, for example, he's not had the kind of season that PSG would probably hope for. Just 2 goals across his 14 appearances, and not really sort of hit the ground running. And I think, when they signed him on the back of Kylian Mbappe leaving, they were really hoping he was going to really solve a lot of their issues. Not quite been the case. And you can kind of see when it comes to League One, has had to do a lot of his games off the bench. He recently hasn't been playing a lot. Hasn't actually started a game in the league since sort of September. So he's 26 years old either as well. So it's not like he's a young player. He is quite versatile in terms of being able to play in many different positions. For example, he's had a much sort of better international career really than he has had a club career so far. So it would be an interesting signing for United, and a player that very much would, I think, better the side. That experience. 26 years old. He's a little bit older, not quite. Sort of Rasmus Højlund, for example, your Garnachas and the likes. The problem is that we need goal scorers, and the moment he's struggling with goal scorers. So it'll be interesting to see where he'd play in the system. Obviously, I'd like to play up front, but how he'd be used within the system and how he might be a different type of player to the likes of a Rasmus Højlund and a Joshua Zirkzee. He's got a bit more pace, for example, about him than a Zirkzee probably has. So good to know, for example, the main thing is that we're looking at a deal like this and that we are investigating potential transfers and the likes because we need to add reinforcements. And I do think that loans are probably our best chance of getting any players in this sort of transfer window. I don't see us bringing anybody in permanently. I also don't really see us losing anybody permanently as well, to be perfectly honest. I don't think we're going to see much movement, full stop. But good to see that Ornstein has confirmed that we are looking at players. And other sort of big comments is that according to Ornstein, Joshua Zirkzee is not looking to go anywhere this summer, or at least this January transfer window as well, and looking to try and stay at United. Very interesting because you go back a few months ago, especially sort of when before Ruben Amorim came in, and he was not getting any game time. He was coming off the bench, wasn't scoring any goals, and he had massive links to Juventus, and apparently Juventus still exploring that deal in January. But according to David Ornstein, he is not looking to leave United and wants to try and stay at the club and try to prove his worth. Whether we want him to stay, well, that's another issue, isn't it? At the moment, he's a player who hasn't happened. Now he's a young player, so he's a player that there's work on. I mean, he's got moments, for example, but at the end of the day, we signed a forward that's not scoring goals. Personally, I wouldn't mind if he left. Not necessarily in January, but for the summer, we can try and get a bit of money back. But what do you think? Would you like to keep him? Would you like to see him leave? Because it's an interesting situation where United would have to once again kind of hold their hands up and basically said that they were wrong and that they that they once again signed a player who's not really good enough for United. That we've kind of wasted our money once again. So it's not an ideal situation at all. But unfortunately, we also can't sit there and linger on bad signings and just say, well, because we paid a lot of money, then we have to kind of stick with him. Not that it was massive money, but we wouldn't get the same money for him that we paid for him, and that's the main thing. So he'd be another player that you'd lose money on. We don't really want to sort of lose money. In terms of other loans, there is a potential deal for Anthony to make a move to Olympiacos on loan, which was said to have been off. Apparently, Anthony's got no intention of going to Greece, but now a bit of a news story coming out saying that the deal is not completely off, but is very complicated, and there's lots of different sort of aspects to it that need to be sorted out. Any certain time when I see a deal that's very complicated, I'm assuming it's just not going to happen, to be perfectly honest. I don't think United have got a lot of negotiating power, and at the end of the day, if the player doesn't want to go there, he's not going to go there. We've got to try and get rid of him on loan, I think, personally. And for him, he needs to get out on loan because he's not playing football at the moment, and he's not going to play much more at United than what he is currently. So frustrating when you've got a potential loan deal and he's not keen. But United need to work really, really hard to try and get certain players out on loan, try and get them playing well, and see if we can then try and get our money back from him. We know that he's not a long-term United player. Now it's about getting as much money from him as possible in the summer. So yeah, we have to wait and see what's going to happen there. It's frustrating because I said, you kind of really just want to move him on, and it just seems to be a move where everyone's quite keen for, except for the player himself. And as I said, I don't understand why Anthony wouldn't be keen to make a move to Olympiacos. He's not playing rugby. He's not playing football at the moment. He's not going to get any game time anytime soon, and his career is completely come off the rails. So why we wouldn't do it, I don't know. But yeah, you have to ask him. But more promising news is that the deal between AC Milan and Marcus Rashford for potential loan is potentially still going to progress. Lots of sources reporting that Italy will remain the most likely destination for Marcus Rashford. There was a story about AC Milan keen on loan, but the fact that United would have to pay a large part of the salary, given the fact that we pay him a ludicrous amount of money. And so the story yesterday was that we'd have to sort of split the wages. But now, Sport Witness has come out and said AC Milan have no problem paying his salary, and they're apparently going to be presenting their project and their sort of bid to Marcus Rashford in the next few days. I think it would be a great move for him. I really do. Whether it's permanent or on loan, I think it would be absolutely brilliant for him to go to Italy, get away from England. I've been saying it for a long time. Get away from England, go to Italy, play with a bit of freedom, go to something like Milan, which give you a nice experience. Get yourself back on the radar, get yourself right. And, you know, he's a player. I mean, that photo kind of sort of sums up where he is at the moment as a player. You know, just not quite, not a happy player, not playing any football at the moment. And, you know, we've got to find a solution. We really do. We've got to find a way of getting him to playing football, to getting back to his best, because it's a win-win situation for all parties. At the end of the day, if we managed to offload him to an AC Milan, and he on loan, you know, and he comes good, he starts scoring lots of goals, for example, and he finds his form. Then come the summer, we can either decide, right, well, maybe he's got his confidence back, we keep him, or else we offload him and we can try and get, obviously, you know, him being a academy product, any money we get from him is effectively, you know, profit. But if we get 30 million for Marcus Rashford, it'll be a disaster, because we're talking about a player we probably could have sold for 100 million a few years ago. And, you know, PSG were long-term admirers, now apparently not that keen on him because of the form he showed. So when we're looking at United and the fact that we're trying to cost cut, for example, that we're trying to sort of obviously got a new stadium we need to pay for, it's going to be a lot of expenses, trying to, you know, refurbish Carrington and the likes of that. There's not a big transfer kitty at the moment. And offloading Marcus Rashford was seen as a sort of a quick-fire way of managing to bring in a decent amount of money. I mean, you go and sell him for £80 million. That's £80 million you can then go and invest somewhere else. You know, he is one of our more marketable players. You know, we're going to lose money on Anthony. We're going to lose money on Xerxes if we offload him. You know, we'll lose money on a lot of these players. We're going to lose money on Jadon Sancho. So we're going to lose money on a lot of players, but he's someone, for example, which would be pure profit because he's an academy player. Similarly, for example, if Garnacho were to leave in the summer, we'd also make, in theory, a pure profit on him. But you don't want to lose a player like that who's ranked within the top 10 best young players in the world. So I really hope that this deal does happen for Marcus Rashford. I think it'll be the best thing for him. I think he needs to get out of England, needs to reset, and I really hope that they can get a loan deal going and he can go and start enjoying his football once again. In terms of some other news from a United perspective, talked a bit about injuries and the fact that Rasmus Højlund is potentially come up and might not be available this weekend. And also, it looks like Manchester United hit a bit of a knock. The good news for United is that we are not playing again this weekend. So they've got some time to recover. So we kind of do expect sort of full fitness this weekend, because we've got that full week. You know, obviously the December period is kind of done. We don't have to worry about playing week in or week out. Another transfer story that's come up is that United are apparently pushing to sign Nuno Mendes, the left back, this month, obviously, because of the lack of left backs. Now, the Telegraph are claiming that Ruben Amorim wants to try and sign the player who he worked with back in the day before PSG signed him from Sporting. But I don't think it's going to happen, especially in January. And whilst it's a really important position, I think it's a position we need to make sure that we get right long term. You know, so I mean, he's not a player you're getting in alone. And if he's a player that Ruben Amorim really wants, then by all means. But you don't want to sort of rush into a player that we're not entirely sure is the right sort of player, long-term player. Like, he's 20 years old, so I wouldn't be upset with the signing. But we need to make sure he's the right type of player if we're going to go out and try and probably beat a 34 million sale that PSG sold it for. You know, so we're going to be upwards of £50 million. And if you're going to go and spend £50 million on left back, please make sure we're setting it on the left back and not just, you know, trying to do a bit of a patch-up job very quickly where we go and sign a player who, yes, he's worked with, for example, before, but is he the right player? Is he the best left back we can go out and find for £50 million, which is probably what we'd have to pay for him? And if the answer is no, or anywhere near no, then we don't do the deal. I think that's the main thing. You know, whilst I'd love to get some signings this season and to get the signings in this window, we've got to make sure that we're finding the right players. Even in summer, we've got to make sure we're finding the right players and that we're not going to sit there in a year's time reselling all the players that we've just brought in. You know, and that for me is the most expensive, most important part of the of our sort of our transfer strategy. Other news is that Paul Scholes has slammed United for the price of Manchester United tickets, or the increase in Manchester United tickets. And he said the following. He said, £66 for a ticket is ridiculous. If you think of Manchester, there are so many deprived areas, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe himself is from Failsworth, which is a deprived area. If you take one kid with you, that's £120. If you take a family, you're looking at £300 to £400. It's not right. Well, it's not right given how crap we are, to be honest. So, yeah, not ideal to be increasing our tickets so much. But at the same time, unfortunately, the reality is when they need to take it over is that the club is got so much debt and so many different expenses and so many issues where, there's not being money sent in, is that they're trying to find money anywhere. At the end of the day, football's progressed where it's not about really people managed it, isn't it? It's about getting those international fans in who are going to pay 66, 70, 80 pounds a ticket, and the club can bank all that money to try and reinvest it. It's not ideal, but it's kind of becoming inevitable, isn't it, in the modern day football? Whether it'll stop or whether it'll ever sort of change, I don't really see it. I think the main thing is United is such a big global brand that they are always going to try and tap into that. And it's so commercialized, isn't it, modern football? So, it's easy for Paul Scholes, who played his football in the 90s and the early 2000s, back when it was sort of really coming into the sort of professional era, since the Premier League started back in the early 90s and the likes. The reality is now is that, you've got all this league and this club which pushed for the sort of international exposure and this international following. Now you've got, all these international people who will pay what they want, what you want. And at the end of the day, United are currently in the worst, we've ever been. We're sitting 13th, 14th in the league. And yet you are sold Old Trafford every week in, week out to international fans at 66, 70, 80 pounds a ticket. And as long as they're going to do that, they're not going to change it. Because why would they change it? They're going to sit there and make money off it. Why would they make the change? Why would they try and, sit there and say, oh, well, shame. Whilst we can make a stupid amount of money, let's, halve the ticket prices because we're trying to support the community. Unfortunately, where we are as a club and with, ownership structures in modern day football, they're not going to do that. And should they do that? Well, probably. It was a club for Manchester, and that was kind of the whole thing. But at the end of the day, football is no longer, the English Premier League is not the English Premier League. It's kind of the worldwide Premier League, really. And for as long as it is like that, you can look at the commercialization of it. And you've got United, posting an hour after defeat, hard luck. By the way, did you like our shirt? Buy them now, on special now. That's how commercialized the clubs have become. And ticket prices is such an easy way of bringing in revenue that they're always going to hike ticket prices to as much as they can, where people will still pay the money to go. And that's the problem, is that people will still pay that money. And as long as those people still pay the money, they can continue charging that. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We're going to be doing a bit of a Ruben Amron reflection in our evening video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. If you are new to the channel, make sure you do subscribe. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like us to cover down in the comments below. Thank you.